It's inevitable when you get into Bitcoin that you're like, what does Bitcoin need? And maybe you've made your own reallocation and you're like, okay, I think I'm comfortable with that at this point. Well, how do you rebuild wealth management for Bitcoin? How do you got involved in some Bitcoin companies, much like myself. What's that experience been like for you? Do you have any like burning ideas that you want to go and build on your own? And I'd love to know kind of what was really obvious to you that worked well and what didn't work so well.
Yeah, I love that question. So for me, I published the book partly as a test of the thesis, partly to help my clients, friends and family, etc. And that was kind of the beginning of the Bitcoin focused or Bitcoin only journey for me. And then, I built a product for Swan, and that was cool. It was hard. I learned a lot, but it was also a reminder of the risks or some of the risks in the sector, which is, first of all, just getting a functional product, that's safe, that works, standing, get it standing is a challenge. And then secondly, you got to sell it. And then thirdly, you got to, really be certain that that your partners, including anyone involved in custody, are solid. Turned out in the case of Swan, that they weren't. Swan had to switch custodians. So that was a challenge. And then obviously the business is notoriously cyclical. And so there's cycles of boom and bust. And so, one of the lessons is working full time and basically entrusting your whole career to this space and this asset. It's really hard. It's really hard because of the cyclicality, and it's hard because, frankly, there's so many rabid Bitcoiners who want to work in Bitcoin that it's a little bit like, I don't know, it's a little bit like pro sports. Like, everyone wants to play in the NBA, but it's pretty tough to compete. It's open to anyone, right? Technically, but supply of talent is really high, and demand for talent or realistic opportunities that are likely to succeed are pretty rare. And if we're honest about it, we look at what business models have survived and thrived so far. They're really few and far between. I mean, there are some mining companies that make money, although that's really cyclical, and there aren't too many that have survived multiple cycles or created value over multiple cycles. Obviously, you've got exchanges, but if you're only selling one asset, if you're selling Bitcoin only, well, just making money on that transaction is a challenge. If you're trying to loop Bitcoin into overall wealth management, that's an ongoing problem, not least because if Bitcoin reaches its potential, then what do you need a financial manager to manage your investments for? Oh, and by the way, as a practical matter, anyone who really understands Bitcoin from the client side is mostly going to want to own Bitcoin, right? They don't want to have that much exposure to a lot of other assets. And then the financial planning, yes, some are unique to Bitcoin. Yes, some are bespoke, but building an entire business around that is a challenge. Now, there are some who have done it. I mean, I know some wealth managers who have built entire businesses or are in the process of building entire businesses just around clients who own lots of Bitcoin. And that also is a challenge because we're not at a level where Bitcoin is so large, that it's really a lot of customers today. There will be a lot more customers in future as Bitcoin reaches its potential, as it gets bigger and bigger, as it gets to multiple trillions in value for the network. But it's still early days. So I guess probably from personal experience, I could say, there's a lot of challenging businesses in Bitcoin. I think there's very few that have resulted in great outcomes for equity holders, or employees. If I'm honest about it, it's surprisingly difficult to build a business. But I'm curious, I'm curious your perspective. I guess I'll make one amendment there too, which is also the podcast business, and there have been some successes there. My personal experience doing a pod for OnRamp was a lot of fun for me, and I got to talk to many of the best people, or what I consider to be the best people in the space.
Yeah, awesome. I listened to some episodes. It was great. I loved hearing you doing it.
I appreciate that. And but on the other hand, yeah, it's getting to scale is a challenge. And yes, there are some who make a good living at it, but it's a pretty short list. Now, I think you could pull it off. I have considered going solo, i.e., not doing it affiliated with a company.
Go solo, baby. Come on.
Yeah, no, I haven't. I've been enjoying spending more time with my kids. I got 3 of them.
Yeah, fair enough.
So eventually, I'll get restless enough, to do something work-wise again in Bitcoin. But right now, I'm on the beach in terms of my Bitcoin activities.
Great.
At the moment.
But the fun thing there is, like, first of all, you got to try, right? I mean, that whole old school phrase of like, you don't fail, you learn. And all those experiences may not have, for both of us, may not have played out as initially intended. It's like, oh shit, how did that happen? That's not quite what I was thinking. But you get so much more from it than you realize. And so without the action, you don't get the clarity. And I think that's undersold in a way. It's like, that's actually incredibly important. The other thing, obviously, is, since 2019, the Bitcoin price itself has performed very nicely. And so your $3,000 that you might have been paying for Bitcoin back in 2019 at 80 something or 75 or whatever it might be today, that's actually done pretty bloody well. So in my mind, it's like all of these entrepreneurial endeavors, it's like we're trying to take old business models and shove them onto Bitcoin, because that's what you do, isn't it? With new markets and new technology. But actually, is that really necessary in 10 years' time? Are people actually going to use that stuff?